Good morning. We're just about ready to get started. Thanks for tuning in for Timeouts. For those of you who don't know about Optimal Beginnings or who I am or what I do, we are an ABA company and we provide behavior therapy, and we're based in Bethesda. About a year ago, we just moved into our first office space. You can see we are fully set up, several therapy rooms. We do everything here from one-to-one ABA to speech therapy, parent coaching, and some social skills groups. Here's another one of our therapy rooms. This one's helpful for parents. That's a two-way or one-way mirror, so you can watch your kids in there. We really love what we do here, and we hope that you guys will stop by if you're around. So if I look a little nervous, it's because I am. This is the first time I've ever done something like this, so if I throw up, don't worry. In order to get ready for this, I already ran 3 miles and took a spin class, so trying to deal with my nerves, but we don't know how that's going to be. Getting into some timeout stuff. Just so you know, I'm a mom of 2 kids, so timeouts hit really close to home for me. My kids are spunky, funky, and I love them to death, but I have an 11-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl who's probably spent a majority of her younger years in timeout. So I have a lot of experience doing this. And just so you know, I'm staring at this nice chocolate cupcake right there that I get to eat when I'm done doing this. So we work on reinforcement systems here. So let's get into it. So an example of what an effective use of timeout might be aggression in your home. So you have 2 kids, somebody hits the other one, and you yell timeout. And the aggressor, or the one who actually hit, has to be in timeout. And you say, that's it, we're going to timeout. And then you don't know what to do. So that's why I'm here. I'm going to tell you what to do. We put our kids in a uninteresting place so that they realize that this is not fun. That is definitely what we want. And we want to make sure that the time is appropriate for them. A rule of thumb that I usually go by is 1 minute per year old. So when my daughter was 2, she was in timeout for 2 minutes. When my son was 4, he was in timeout for 4 minutes. I still do use timeout with them. So now that my son is almost 11, we've jumped up and he sits in for 11 minutes. And my daughter sits for 8. So we make sure that we have our rules set, and our timeout space, again, is an uninteresting space. They are there for that amount of time with calm bodies and really quiet. If they are not quiet and they are not calm when they go in timeout, I restart the timer. That's a really fun time for them, I've got to say. They get the idea now, but when they were younger, we used to have to start the timer over and over and over. So timeouts were really a long period of time, which is a consideration you need to have when you threaten timeout. And you can't threaten it, you've got to follow through. Once you say you're going to do it, just do it. It becomes ineffective if you don't follow through. So make sure you have the time to dedicate to teaching them how to do timeout. So making sure you have your rules set and you don't give in and you don't waver. The calm body thing is important because you need to be able to process through it with them when they're done. You need to be able to relate what happened to why they were in timeout, and talking about it when they're finished, and giving them strategies to engage so that they don't have to go back to timeout is really, really important. It's just a time to chill out, relax. You don't want them reading books or playing with toys because it clouds the consequence. It should be a very boring, unexciting time. Do we have any questions? I'm sitting in here with 2 people, Amy and Kathy. That's Kathy with the headphones and Amy with the pink sweater. So we're ready, if you are, to take on any questions at all. Timeouts in school are different than timeouts at home. Timeouts in school are usually done in response to aggression or back talk or something like that, and they are contingent observation spaces. So these are kids who can see what's going on. They are not isolated from the rest of the population. They are just there, and they just can't engage and get attention. So, oh, here's a question. My toddler doesn't seem to be fazed by 2 minutes in timeout. What do you suggest? I suggest you actually make it a little less time than 2 minutes, and you set those boundaries very clearly and say, this is why you are in timeout. And as soon as he engages in it again, there's no warning. It goes right back to timeout. It might take several times before the connection between their behavior and the consequence kicks in. And that's okay. It takes time. It takes time to set up that contingency, especially with a 2-year-old. They need to learn how things go back and forth. Just like we as adults need to learn what's expected of us, particularly in a job setting, and it's the same thing for your kids.
Got some few questions coming in.
Amy Wolf, is it appropriate to give timeout for an older child, middle schooler, versus taking something away from them, electronic devices? Well, I think they're kind of the same thing. So it depends what is motivating to your child. Taking away an electronic device is a timeout, and that might be something that is more appropriate for your child. I have a preteen, and so my preteen still sits in timeout because sometimes the behavior doesn't have anything to do with an electronic device, so it's not relevant to him. For my son, keeping him inside and not letting him go outside to play football tends to be a more reasonable consequence for him. Another question is, what happens if, as a parent, I lose my nerve and give in and don't follow through on timeout? You just create a lot more heartache for yourself because you've inadvertently taught your child that if they are more persistent than you, they will win and you will give in. Another question is, do you have coping mechanisms for parents when we begin to lose our cool with our child? I do. And your children don't always need a response immediately. You have about a 10-second delay. So you can look at them in the eye, take a deep breath, and think about what it is you really want to say to them. I lose my cool all the time with my daughter, particularly. She just knows exactly what buttons to push. And so counting to 3 and calming myself down and looking at her and saying, you can't talk to me like that. When you're calm, I can talk to you and I can walk away from her. And she's old enough now that if I put her in timeout later, she can remember why she would have been there. So John, what are some strategies to use to prevent distractions? If you live in a small space, it's really, really difficult. When we lived in a smaller place, I would just turn my child around and I would try to keep other siblings away, try to move people into a different room as much as I could. But minimizing those distractions are really important. But they're okay if the kid's body, if your child's body is calm and they are not, engaging the other people. If the other people are ignoring them, then you're still okay. Tanya asks, she started using timeout for when her daughter hits the dog, but the hitting isn't decreasing. How or what should she change? Tanya, I think you need to move the dog away from the child. I think that's probably the best thing you could do. When your daughter hits the dog, put her in timeout and keep the dog away from her. Let her come out of timeout, but she's not allowed to go near the dog for another 2 to 3 minutes, and see how that works. Another question about sensory choices. How do you determine whether a child stays in the designated area where the event happened or goes someplace else? It depends on what things you have in that space. Again, if it is a very boring space with nothing in it, then I think you're fine. I don't provide alternate choices. Timeout in my house is sitting on the steps because there is absolutely nothing for them to do there. Another question is, how often is too often to put my child in timeout? Timeout can be effective when it's not overused. You have to determine what behaviors are the major offenses in your house and use timeout for those. There are other behavior strategies you can use to, deal with some other things. But timeout is almost a last resort if you can use it. Another question is, this mom has an 11-year-old who runs after their kittens and forces them to play and tries to lay on them, and now the kittens are afraid of him. So is timeout appropriate? That it may be appropriate in the beginning, and taking him away from the kittens is very appropriate because he's not engaging with them appropriately. He's scaring them, and that's not good for them either. What do you do if your child leaves their timeout spot? I walk them right back to their timeout spot and restart the timer and move on from there, and explain that timeout is only going to be X amount of minutes, but if they get up, you have to start again. There's no way to kind of go back on that. Another question is about different parenting styles. You have to get on the same page with your spouse in dealing with your kids. If timeout is not going to be a useful tool for you and your spouse, then you have to come up with another strategy that works for your spouse. If you're the only one who uses timeout, then you should use it for the times that you're the one in charge, and you can't criticize your other one. Another question is, hi Gina. MJ is 2.5 and wants me to sit with him during timeout. Is that okay, or can I walk away but be in his line of vision? You're not giving him the timeout from attention if you talk to him during timeout, and that's the entire thing. Is especially at 2.5, a lot of what he's doing is for your attention, because prior to 2.5, all he got was your attention. So when you stay in his line of vision, when you stay in his and you stay and talk to him, you're not in fact doing a timeout. You're just giving him a calm time. And Tanya, do I separate her from the dog and give even more attention to the dog, and she'll come back from time to time and hit him again? If it's for attention, then you have to really strongly draw that line. If you can, put her in her room. If she's little enough, put her in her crib. And every single time she hits him, put her in a space that she doesn't want to be in at that point in time. And when she's calm, then she can come back. So we're in early 2017. We're going to be starting some online parent coaching workshops. So I encourage everyone to tune into those, because timeouts are definitely going to be one of the things that we talk about. Any other questions? All right. So look for our emails about parent coaching. Contact our office about it. We offer them now in Bethesda, in our office, in homes. Some more information is on our website. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back another time.